Well, it's been a wild week. I feel like I'm ready for the weekends.
Same. I feel like there's been a lot going on too. It's like the 1 year anniversary of the pandemic.
Feels too real. It feels too real. Yeah, I know. We were talking today with a vendor and saying how we can't believe that this March is still crazy. We feel like, normally by March things kind of slow down, but it's just been insane, which
Yeah.
is fun, challenging, but a lot of fun. So it's been a
Totally,
little
totally.
crazy.
It's been wild. But yeah, so I'll obviously kick it off. We want to thank Brand Innovators for having us. Thinking it's such a great opportunity to meet Brittany and also to get to know more about this really unique and innovative company, SimpleTire. So please bear with us. We're newbies at the live cast, both of us. So
Yeah.
we get pass on any tech issues or awkward pauses. That's we get a pass on that.
Yeah,
Um,
please.
but quick intro on my end. I started my media career on the agency side, and after 15 years there, made the leap over to the publisher platform side. So currently working on the partnerships team at Influential, which is the largest influencer marketing company in the space. We are powered by IBM Watson. IBM Watson, we're the exclusive influencer partner. We have an extremely sophisticated technology and measurement, tracking the consumer journey and delivering real results for brands. So again, just a little bit of my background. And I think it would be awesome, Brittany, if you could share a little about your background, as I think, again, your moves and your creative path has been super interesting.
Liza, your elevator pitch was so good. I loved it.
Oh, thank you.
I feel like I'm always doing that for SimpleTire, so I'm very impressed. So a little bit about me. I am the brand marketing lead here at SimpleTire, here in my living room at SimpleTire. And interestingly, started completely remote, so it's been a wild ride so far. I've been with the company about 8 months. Get rid of this dirty cup behind me. It's Zoom snafu. Seriously, a year on. So I actually started my career in the PR agency world. I moved right to New York at the ripe old age of 21 and kind of hit the ground running and did that for about 8 years before I landed. I should say I was in New York and then I was in Sydney. So some international experience as well, and just really immersed in the consumer brand world. And that's really where I fell in love with all things comms, PR, and marketing. When I came back to the States, I had a brief stint in New York and quickly realized that New York was no longer for me anymore. And ended up in Philly working for Urban Outfitters in their food and beverage department, which is a small part of what they do, but it was really interesting and unique. We were a small but mighty team. We worked on a couple of really interesting brands. I eventually moved over to work on the Terrain brand, running all the marketing for their wedding venues and cafes. And that was pretty awesome. There was 5 cafes and 2 wedding venues all throughout the States, which was really wonderful. And then COVID hit. So that was interesting as well. You can imagine last March when I was, as the PR person, writing a lot of very sad notes to brides that we had to calmly tell, we don't know what's going on and neither do you. And we'll figure it out and do the best that we can. So come July, it was really interesting. I got a phone call from this wild brand called SimpleTire, who's really revolutionizing the way people approach tire replacement. And they said, we need brand marketing help. Are you in? And I said, yeah. So here I am. And it's pretty awesome.
I was going to say, I love it because I think it's such an interesting path too, like, going from urban
weddings to tires.
Weddings to tires. And I think,
what do you mean? They're so similar.
Totally. Yeah. Lots of alignment there. But I think as we spoke, obviously the other day too, coming from 2 non-tire, although I should say I'm not a non-tire person, but I think I mentioned this, my dad is a tire fanatic. So I randomly know some terms and things, but obviously coming from 2 non-tire people embarking on this conversation, would be great if you could tell us a little bit more about SimpleTire and also like what your role encompasses there. Because again, I think it's such a unique and innovative company. Would love to hear more.
It really is. And that's how they captured me. I mentioned to you when we spoke, my dad's been in the tire industry for 35 years. So when I gave him a call and I said, hey, this tire company called and wants me to work for them. And he said, why? And I said, I don't know. So it was really wild. I mean, SimpleTire is incredible what they've done since 2012. I mean, they've really been committed to, I like to say, democratizing tire replacement. I think, it's one of those tasks that's incredibly daunting for people who don't feel like they know enough about their cars or their tires. And it's knowledge that you maybe don't necessarily need to know. There's enough opportunity to kind of just take your car to the dealership and throw money at the problem. But really, SimpleTire is dedicated to empowering people to make the best decisions for themselves. So our website, you can actually go on and buy your tires completely online. You also have the option to make an installation appointment through us at a local service center. So it's really that end-to-end experience. But it's been interesting because our company was really founded by guys who grew up in the tire industry and didn't want the little guys to get left behind. So we're not a warehouse full of tires that we ship out to people all over the States. We actually get our supply from local suppliers and manufacturers all across the country. So we're supporting small businesses. We also support them obviously through the local service centers where we send people to get their installation appointments. And it's this all virtual inventory model that is really unique. And allows us to have a huge assortment, which can be a little intimidating to people who don't know about, what they need and what they want. But we also have a lot of tools on our website that help really navigate the experience for people. So when you go online, you can find your tires by size. You can type in just your car type, and we actually give you top recommendations. So if you want us to guide you, we will. If you don't, you can kind of say, no, I don't need your top recommendations. I just want to browse the selection. So it's really interesting. We're trying to make an experience that's valuable for tire people and non-tire people alike. And our CEO always says, that simple or tire replacement is never going to be a fun process. We know that it's not, nobody wants to go and spend a couple $100 on 4 bits of rubber that goes on your car. It's not a sexy purchase, but we're trying to make it kind of fun-ish, right? Like it can be a little bit more fun than people think. And then as far as my day-to-day role, I handle everything soup to nuts on the brand awareness side. So I manage social media and PR, in addition to, message strategy, running point on all of our big promotional sales, making sure our on-site messaging mirrors that, kind of overseeing some of the content on the website from a blog side. So I kind of have my fingers in a lot right now, which is really exciting. And yeah, I'm also managing our affiliate program, which we're really excited to get a little bit more deeply into. So anything brand awareness, I probably have something to do with it.
That's awesome. That's awesome. And I think that just again, hearing when we chatted like about the company and knowing, like you said, buying tires is by no means, sexy or,
Sexy.
but I also do though, to your point of, it's hard too. I think for some people, if they're not, that's not their thing. It's a difficult thing. And when I went on the website, like it does make it so, and again, this is I think obviously the evolvement of e-com and everything, but it just makes it much easier and simpler. And it's a 1, 2, 3. And yeah.
Very straightforward. And that's kind of our UX team, and I feel like we'll talk about it in a little bit. Our UX team is so wonderful at really understanding what our customer wants and needs. And we do a lot to ask, which I think, some brands don't, which I think is really interesting. And we're fairly young in this kind of evolution of our website and our team. So I feel like we're still in that kind of foundational findings mode of understanding, how can we make it better for everyone, which is challenging because there's a lot of levels of car maintenance knowledge out there, totally. As we were talking about, which we have none.
Exactly. But yeah, and it's also great to hear. I do love to, again, how SimpleTire works, and they are, tapping into those, those local businesses too, which I think leads us into this sort of next question too about COVID. And I think one big, hit, COVID obviously impacted the world, but definitely impacted on brands and marketing. It's been, impact there has been multifaceted, and especially obviously too with local businesses. But would love to hear just a bit more about how this past year has played a role for SimpleTire, because I think obviously given its, e-com focus, I think that would be really interesting to hear about this past year and what happened.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, we're e-commerce, so it's no surprise to say come March of last year, we saw a huge increase and uptick in people, searching for tires online, finding us in those places where maybe they haven't been before. Really interesting, about a year before COVID started, the team here recognized the opportunity to broaden the awareness of our brand and just the viability of tire replacement online to a broader customer. So before, where it was kind of like, we were doing a lot of CPC work and finding our customers in like Google search and all of those types of things, the more paid aspect, we're rethinking, how do we develop a new user experience to make it better for, like I was saying before, people of all levels of car maintenance knowledge. How do we make it easy for people to do this and think about this more often, the same way that you've seen a lot of other DTC brands kind of pop up and revolutionize the way that you purchase mattresses or razors, things like that. So when COVID hit, we were already knee deep, probably even like elbow deep in the development of the new website. And I think it just really cemented the commitment to this new journey that SimpleTire is on, which is really awesome. And the interesting thing too, is we saw, kind of harping back on what I was saying before, like our all virtual inventory model, we actually were able to continue business as usual in areas where other tire replacement services or centers or warehouses couldn't, because they were being shut down due to COVID. So we were basically able to kind of continue, like I said, business as usual, where other businesses may have been hindered due to COVID in the early stages. And again, that growth just really cemented the viability of us, doing this new user experience, understanding our customer more, and then just, continuing to innovate. And not to mention too, our team grew 200% in 2020. So it's kind of bananas. Like COVID was a wild year in a lot of ways. Personally, I switched jobs. So that was kind of insane. Not something I thought I would be doing in the middle of a pandemic. But yeah, our team went from, pretty small to pretty substantial for where we were pretty quickly, which is cool.
Yeah, I was going to say, that's amazing. Again, obviously there are so many negatives from COVID, but it is really nice to also hear about some of these success stories coming out of COVID, whether it's people like, these startups that are creating these new ideas, or companies pivoting on what's happening. But again, like you said, like your team growing similar to ours, our team has blown up, and it's nice to just, I think, to focus on some of those positives and those success stories during the past year, which has been rough, but it's great to hear.
Try to keep it light, right? We'll try to find the silver linings where we can take them.
Exactly. I feel like that's the thing, is that they're totally, I always love to hear those stories, or again, hear about like the COVID babies or the COVID, like whatever it may be. It's always nice to hear those stories. So.
Honestly, all the little weddings, they were so lovely. All the elopements. I know that like people didn't get their big, huge days, but so many people I've talked to that kind of pivoted to the smaller situations just had a wonderful time. So, I've still got weddings on the brain, clearly. No, 3 years of working in the industry is hard to forget.
No, of course. My best friend had the same thing. She had to pivot and she got married on a beach with her family. People, again, it's those happy moments too. They still exist, and they're good to see.
Just gotta find them.
Exactly. But knowing that obviously this is the panel, obviously consumer engagement, I think it'd be great to talk a little bit more about how important understanding your consumers is, and the research, and really that consumer archetype, because I think it's, again, back to our conversation and sort of the beginning of this, is that not everyone is a tire person, and there are obviously different types. So would love a little bit more insight into your that consumer archetype and understanding of consumers.
Yeah, so this is something that SimpleTire really realized was important as they were developing the new user experience. So before my time, probably 2 years ago, they went through some pretty extensive brand research where they really uncovered who they thought the archetypes were. So we now have a couple, I think we have 6. We kind of talk about Kyle, Ian, Patty, they all have names. And it's really interesting because now we utilize those to help us really identify opportunities for growth and innovations, and also, what external partnerships make sense, knowing that we want to reach a Patty who maybe is a Costco shopper versus an Ian who probably takes his car to the dealership. So it's really interesting trying to understand who your customer is and who you want to acquire, and then trying to shape, like Kyle is who we already have, the tire guy. He already found us. He's already looking for tires. He knows we exist. He probably just wants the cheapest price. So it's, how do we really leverage what we do for all of these archetypes? I think, we also understand the motivators and the sentiments that these people have. And again, that's how we really shape our user experience and the different tech that we roll out. So actually are still in the midst of a lot of consumer branding research, which has been really awesome to be part of. And my connection is unstable. So if I start cutting out, I'm really sorry. All right, I think I'm back. Okay. So we've been doing, like I said, extensive brand research right now. We're midway through, which has been really exciting. I think I mentioned to you at, PR agency world, you're kind of given the cake's fully baked by the time you get it. I'm kind of in the ingredient mode right now, which has been really unique after, nearly 10 years of this, getting to experience a new side of things. And it's been awesome. And the hope really is that, this consumer research is digging deeper into beyond just who our archetypes are. Who are we? Who are we to them? Who can we appeal to and why? What's the white space we fill in the market? We're not the only tire e-retailer on the market. We know that, but where do we fit? What's our unique selling propositions? What's our value propositions? All of these things. And even beyond just doing the consumer research that we're doing at a higher level, day to day, our UX team is constantly doing consumer research, which is awesome. We're user testing consistently when it comes to new tech that we're launching. We're always asking our customers what they think. We're finding people who have never even shopped online for tires to ask them what they think about new tech. It's really cool. It's really interesting to see how you can leverage consumer research to really be cross-functional. It goes beyond, UX and marketing kind of go hand in hand, but a lot of the research that we're doing right now, for example, we're doing some install research, and we interviewed 32 service center workers to understand how do we appeal to them from a B2B standpoint. How do we send you more customers? What's valuable to you? How can we be a better partner? And so that's been really exciting. And again, just like shows that cross-functional usage of research results and how you can leverage those insights to just make your business better, not beyond just marketing, just holistically.
Totally. Yeah, I was going to say, honestly, those all come together. And I think it leads actually perfectly kind of into this next question. And I think that this is definitely a big one, talking about the consumer journey, especially when it comes to buying tires, obviously. I think that we talked about, this SimpleTires kind of came around and disrupted the tire category, which is awesome and great. And that's, I think, what we're seeing with a lot of these new successful companies, and they've really changed the whole tire buying process. So would love a little bit more insight onto, again, your consumer journey and how it's changed the whole process when coming to buying tires.
Oh, tires. I know, those magical things. So, I think it's pretty obvious to most people that the traditional way that you would go get tires is, that you need new ones, and you go to your local service center or you go to your dealership and they say, here are the tires we have, pick one. And so you don't really have a lot of control. Once you realize you have the tires, you're like, okay, well, I guess I just need to relinquish this process and kind of leave it to God kind of in some ways.
Right.
Yeah, like, and I think, the interesting thing is, like I said, it causes anxiety to people. It's like a daunting task. We always say it's the daunting task of tire replacement. It is daunting. It feels overwhelming. You don't know where to start. So you do end up just going to a shop and saying like, yeah, whatever, just do whatever you need to do to get me back on the road, which feels kind of unfortunate. You should be more of a master of your own destiny when you're making such a high value purchase. And like I mentioned to you before, our founders grew up in the tire industry. So beyond just creating a better way of buying tires, for the consumer, they also wanted to make sure that as e-commerce blossomed, that the little guys weren't getting left behind. So how could they create a company that not only made the consumer happier and have a better experience, but how could they also help the little guys kind of come along for the ride and be the e-commerce extension of a lot of the suppliers across the country that like maybe will never have a website, and that's okay for them. So I think, really that's what we were trying to do at the start. It's evolved slowly over time, really quickly over time. We've not even been around for 10 years now. And today, everything's online. I think I've mentioned to you, the web is the great equalizer. So now we're developing, like I've mentioned, a couple of times here, is like we're developing an experience that's really end to end. No longer do you have to feel like you have to go to your local guy and just kind of leave it to him. You can take control of the experience. We always say, put you back in the driver's seat, of course, all the car puns. And so you can feel empowered. That's really what we're about. How do we empower the person that needs to go get their tires quickly, efficiently, and hopefully cheaply? How do we empower the installers to have more customers coming through their doors? How do we empower the suppliers to make sure that they're staying afloat and providing their tires, and maybe shipping that tire that they've had in their warehouse for a long time over to somebody who needs it? So I feel like that's really where we're trying to change the game, and we offer so many different capabilities on site to empower people. I mentioned the tire recommendations before. So based on data points, we recommend tires for you based on your location, your tire size, buyers like you. We also have tons of ratings and reviews because we know that that's really important to people as they're exploring which tire they want. So yeah, I feel like, just making that seamless online end-to-end experience to really take out the exhaustion of having to go and feel like you have no say in the matter. I feel like that's really how we're kind of challenging the traditional tire industry. That was only brick and mortar, really.
Right. Which is incredible. I mean, that's the, change. I think obviously, like you said, changing the game in this industry that is very old and antiquated and traditional.
Very traditional.
Very traditional, is huge. But on that same token, I think looking forward, because again, it is such a it's such a traditional industry. What do you think, or what does innovation look like for the auto or auto care consumer, especially when it comes to SimpleTire, because you guys have done so much already. It'd just be interesting to hear any thoughts on sort of innovation as we look to the future.
Yeah, I mean, for us, it's always innovating how our experience works for people. How can we make it more simple? How can we make it easier? How can we make it quicker? How can we, do everything that the customer really wants us to do? I think more and more we're seeing that people want a one-stop shop when it comes to auto care. So is there an e-commerce solution where you can kind of do it all in one place? As you're installing or as you're booking an installation, can you also book a rotation or an oil change, things like that. So understanding, where does that fit into our mix as a tire company, first and foremost, is really interesting. We're really focusing, as I mentioned before, on the install side, making more relationships with local installers to really deliver on that promise of helping small businesses, and also giving you, the opportunity to get your tires put on at a place near you that you love, hopefully. And again, it's always harnessing that consumer research to understand what innovations we can add. So we've got things like new on-site tech coming that I can't necessarily talk about, but might be on site right now if you want to check it out, where you can kind of start your tire shopping journey with a photo, which is really interesting. Just again, continuing to level the playing field for people of all levels of car maintenance knowledge. I think really that's where we're in the game of. And transparency. I think that's something that I learned a lot about when I first started at SimpleTire. Was there wasn't a lot of transparency in the industry before. So you might not have known, the full gamut of what you were getting from a tire or from a service center. And now really, like, we're putting it all out there for you so that you can make the best decision for you. And I think that's really what people want. They want to be able to, again, be the master of their own destiny when they're coming to purchase a big ticket item. I mean, look at, other brands that are now selling cars online. It's very similar. And how are they innovating? They're also now offering financing. So it's, how are we going to continue to kind of push things forward from a tire perspective? I guess only time will tell.
Yeah, no, for sure. Now looking, sort of narrowing back down to this whole, marketing side of things and thinking marketing media. When you guys are looking, because again, I know that there, like you said, we've been around for a while, but there's been a massive change in your site and the way that you're marketing. What does for you and your team, what does success look like? When is it ROI, change perception, awareness? Again, given the path that SimpleTire has been on, be interesting to know what success looks like for you.
Yeah, for sure. It's really interesting. When I joined SimpleTire, I mean, you hear so much about challenger brands today that are starting, in the COVID times and all of that. And they have a very strong sense of self. They have a very clearly defined brand, and they kind of start from that earned perspective. SimpleTire didn't start that way. It was a very, there wasn't a huge focus on brand awareness. It was more, how do we acquire the customer in an efficient way? And it was incredible, and it worked, and they grew exponentially. But as you realize, your growth, it can only go so fast when you don't have the owned, earned, paid kind of cycle running together. And I think when they were developing the new website, there was an obvious need for marketing to come into play, a brand marketing to come into play, to really understand, how do you acquire more customers beyond the ones that are already shopping for tires? Because you really can't, unless you're getting out there and getting a little bit more just general brand awareness. So at the tail end of 2020, the marketing team grew a lot. Our CMO joined about a month after I joined. And so ever since then, it's really been about, how do we strategize? Again, that's where the consumer research comes in. That's been a big proponent of what we're doing right now. And it's education. So I think, as we develop this brand research and we get a little bit of that, North Star in front of us, I can see towards the tail end of this year, I think a lot of this more brand marketing is going to come into play. Right now, we're really setting the foundation. If you go to our social, you can tell, it's there. We're getting there. We're working with more influencers. We're kind of dipping our toe in a lot of pools this year. And I think as we continue to grow, we're going to keep changing the perception of tire replacement. Definitely, you asked if that was a key. Of course, we want people to understand that it doesn't have to be a pain. It can be fairly painless, realistically, if you plan your time right and just tackle it with confidence, and hopefully we'll give you the confidence to do that. I mean, as an e-commerce business, we're obviously focused on analytics. So ROI is a huge part of, understanding what we're getting out of things, which is one of the reasons why we're really tackling affiliates this year. So we're diving into that channel kind of head first, whereas before we kind of had it, but didn't really strategize too much around it and things like that. So that's really exciting. And I'm hopeful at some point, we'll be doing some broader brand campaigns, which is what I'm really passionate about. So it's interesting. It's really cool now to see how all the channels are kind of working together. And I feel like we're only going to grow from there. So we're in this kind of incubation period. And I feel like this time next year, I'll probably have so much more fun stuff to tell you about. So maybe we'll have to reconvene and I can share case study. And because right now we're just in full on planning strategy mode, which is super exciting for me because that's really why I joined. I want to be a thoughtful marketer. And I feel like that's really what we're trying to do.
That's awesome to hear. And yes, I really look forward to maybe a part 2 next year of all the success that you guys have had. And I love hearing you talking about affiliate and also influencer. And I know that we've touched on it, but yeah, I could see that being a huge part, hopefully in the future, given the results that hopefully they show this year. And then I think we have one more question, and actually this is perfect timing, which we didn't even plan, but this just really couldn't have worked out better. But the one question that kind of broadly wanted to ask is one thing that you're looking forward to professionally and or professionally this year, given obviously everything that's happening now. And I do think that there is a light at the end of the tunnel, and there is, and I just read that 1 out of 4 Americans is vaccinated. There's a lot going on, and I see the light, which is nice because I don't think we have been able to see the light in a while. So would love to hear what you're looking forward to professionally and personally, and then we can get to some Q&A.
So much. Travel. I'm looking forward to traveling. This time last year, I was gearing up for a trip to Australia that I never got to take to go visit my friends. So I'm hoping that we could reschedule that towards the tail end of this year. I'm looking forward to hugging my mom and dad and not feeling guilty about it afterwards because they can't help it. I'm looking forward to, so much from a personal level. I feel like I got a lot of irons in the fire with like side projects and interiors and things that I really want to do. But from a professional standpoint, I'm really looking forward to building our marketing team and building our center of excellence, really, and getting into working more with like-minded brands, working with our tire manufacturer partners. There's so much opportunity. There's so much white space because we've not done a ton in past in my channels. So I feel like just continuing to leverage that kind of stuff, understanding more how influencers can move the needle for us. I think that's really interesting because there's how many car influencers out there? There's so many, but how many influencers who just have cars that probably haven't thought about, utilizing a service like ours. So I think that's really cool and interesting. And again, like dipping my toe into new channels. Yeah, this affiliates I already touched on, that's something I'm managing, which I've never really done before, but there's such crossover with PR, launching new tech, all of that stuff. And hopefully a full scale branding campaign later this year. And that's like really my bread and butter. So I'm looking forward to tackling that and hopefully, becoming more of a household name. That's really what I want.
That's awesome. And yeah, I know you mentioned to me, you're like, I just want like the big, like the creative, fun, big stuff. Yeah. Big stuff, which is so it's great to hear that. And obviously that is definitely, it sounds like, to come, given the success that you guys have had so far. And I hear you on the traveling. I was supposed to be at the same time last year heading to Paris. So I feel you. Yeah.
Paris is the best.
I know. And it was for a birthday and my friend reached out and she was like, Paris 2022. I was like, I'm in. Tell me when.
I feel like my friends now, we were supposed to go to Nashville for my boyfriend's birthday last year. And they're like, all right, let's get it back on the books for the fall. It's time.
Yeah, I think everyone is itching to just get those because I think that the big unknown has been the problem, and no one has been able to book things or reschedule anything. And now I feel like people are starting to feel that. So it's super exciting.
Yeah, it's true. The one positive has been, taking some road trips safely and gone on hiking trips locally and discovered Vermont and am now in love with Vermont. So like there have been some bright spots, I think, this year, and we haven't killed each other yet in this house. So that's a good thing.
I know, exactly. There are, I was gonna say, I've taken Spanish lessons. I feel like there are things that like came out of it that I'm like, well,
good for you. That's awesome.
Like we said, silver lining. Okay, let's get to a couple of these questions as they come in. Okay. A question. I saw you were named one of the best companies to work at. What aspects of your day-to-day do you see this positive culture? That's awesome.
That's a great question. Thank you. And funnily, I was talking about this yesterday with my friend whose CEO doesn't believe that you can build a culture remotely. And I'm here to tell you that is false, because I joined completely remotely in July. And I've been to the office one time because I had to do a photo shoot, masked up, of course. And honestly, this place is great. It really is fun. The executives are wonderful and they're accessible, which I think is really unique. We've grown exponentially, but I still could have a one-on-one with our CEO, our CTO, or our COO anytime because they're here and they're on the ground and they're doing their thing. I think from a culture perspective, I know, our fun committee, which I'm on, we always try and do activations and things as far as, trivia nights. And we have a trivia night coming up next week for St. Patrick's Day, which is company wide, which is great. Every Monday morning, we have a stand up with our CEO. Once a month, it's a little bit of a longer, bigger meeting, but typically it's like a quick 15-minute, hey, hi, how are you? This is what's going on. Different team members are highlighted. We have team member of the month. We have innovator of the month. We now have a tuition reimbursement program that just came out. So they're always trying to think of new ways to keep things happy, light, and fun, which I really appreciate. And I've definitely worked at places that did not have a healthy culture, where it was maybe just based around Friday happy hours. And this is definitely a lot different. And I just feel like the open door communication's wonderful. And I think most people that work at SimpleTire really enjoy, probably everyone really just enjoys it. It's a good place to work, and the people are wonderful. My team is great. I love everyone, which is rare.
I was gonna say that's awesome, and also one makes things so much easier just when, obviously, given how many hours your day takes up, your job takes up, but also knowing that you did join during this whole, during the pandemic. I think that that's a huge testament to the company, because I think it, a lot of people struggled, but knowing that they do all that from a culture perspective is awesome.
Yeah, it's really cool. And we have people all over, obviously, being e-commerce, we're based in Philly, so I could go to the office when we reopen, but we've got, some of our service guys are in Indianapolis. We got people in Ohio. We got people kind of dotted everywhere. Our CTO's in Utah and has always been based there. So it's really interesting. And I think, obviously we've been able to function remotely, and not even just function, we've really been thriving, which has been awesome.
That's awesome. Well, and to that point, so another question actually leads this perfectly into that. Says you've seen tremendous growth this year. Do you feel like you're drinking from a hose? How do you manage day-to-day operations with such growth?
Yeah, it's tough. There's a lot going on, and we definitely need a little bit more headcount in our marketing team. I will admit that. It doesn't necessarily feel like we're drinking from a fire hose necessarily. I think the expectations aren't overblown. It's kind of prioritizing and get to what you can get to, and that's what needs to be okay at this moment in time, knowing that we just need a little bit more headcount. But I think it's interesting, when I always have one-on-ones I report directly into our CMO. We have one-on-ones weekly where we just kind of go over priorities and understand what can be left to the side, and what needs to really be activated. And sometimes, social needs to take a back seat because we've got a PR launch coming up and I'm only one person. So we're all busy. We're all stretched a little thin. I feel like that's just what's going on right now. Like I said, I was expecting March to get a little slower. It doesn't seem to be. It's a kind of bit, but not really. But yeah, I think, again, being at a good workplace where the expectations they don't exceed the 8 hours in a day. Sometimes they do, but I think when you appreciate who you work for and with, it makes it a lot easier to kind of be like, okay, it's going to be a little busy for a while, but it'll get there. We'll get there. We're growing. We're building. It's a lot of foundational work that's happening right now. So I think it comes with a territory.
Yep, for sure. I think that everyone wants, the growth, obviously, this similar with our companies, that you just kind of have to prioritize, and if you have a good team in place, it really does help. I think that that's huge. So like you said, you love your team, and that's huge. And okay, one last question here. It said, this is a tactical question. What does your consumer demographic look like? I know we touched on this, but are there geographic disparities, gender? So a little bit more in the weeds there on your demographic, because obviously we spoke about this. There's a lot.
Yeah. So the core archetypes that we're really looking at, it's interesting. They're pretty much split male to female. We named them male because they were more male, some of them. But we do have a pretty even split. It's interesting the amount of car maintenance decisions that are made by the women in the household. And, we take that into consideration as we're kind of developing things. Oh my gosh, what was the question? I feel like I went off on a tangent.
No, not at all. That the demographic, are there geographic disparities?
Oh, yeah.
Obviously gender, but we know that, again, they're like, you have Ian and you have, what was the other one?
We have Patty.
Patty. I don't know. Yeah.
Ian, Patty, Kyle. Yeah,
Yeah.
there's a couple of different ones.
Yeah.
Geographically, I mean, we have a bigger supply and installation presence in certain parts of the country, but I mean, we service nationally, so we really don't see necessarily a disparity. I mean, there's obviously, I would say, more cars per capita in like more rural suburban areas than there would be in like a New York City. So for us, like, doing big activations in New York probably wouldn't be as relevant for our brand as they might be for, you know, a different type of brand. But honestly,